This week in comic books, we're going to talk about half of this book. Justice League Dark was awesome, and I'm going to explain a lot of stuff into it. Also, is it just me, or is Black Knight like the loneliest douchebag ever? And does it justify people using him as an means for their own means? Oh yeah, heroes being bad guys again. We're going to talk about that. And this was a weird book. The art kind of reminds me of well, I don't want to say famous because it was Cartoon Network, but a cartoon on Cartoon Network. We're going to talk about that and all the other books from this week right after that intro. Check it out. Hey, what's going on, you wonderful weirdos? I'm Pocan Joe, and as always, you're pretty cool for swinging by. Appreciate having you here. If it's your first time here, basically I'm a middle-aged man that reads a bunch of comic books, find a bunch of interesting facts and stuff like that in it, and then I love to share it with you. And we can conversate by you commenting down below and let me know if you see anything in a comic book that I should be looking at. Also, I give my very superficial point of view of these comic books as well, so just know that that's gonna happen. If you're new here, don't forget to like and subscribe, all that other stuff that you hear every other single YouTuber say out there. So without further ado, let's jump into this week's comic book haul for 3/17, St. Patty's Day, which surprisingly none of the comic books kind of focused on that this week. They spent so much time on all the other holidays, they didn't really. Anyway, let's talk about it. Here we go. First one, right up off the bat, we've heard about it. It's Superman, blue and red. I went with this beautiful, stunning cover here. Kind of depicts the title, right? This is a bunch of a collection of stories that just kind of reaffirm to us about Superman's morals and his values and his ethics, right? That kind of stuff that makes Superman stoic, I think is the best way to put it, and his reasoning behind things. And his motivations, and it really kind of plays heavily off of that kind of stuff. I guess we're reestablishing a Superman now, which makes sense in the next book when we get to Truth and Justice. So in this one, we make Superman Clark Kent I don't know. This was extremely a political point of view in the comic book, and I thought that it misled and misrepresented some facts in there, especially when they were talking about the percentage of incarcerated people that are overall, right? That the behind the stories, it's mostly African Americans, right? That are heavily influenced. But even in here, our writer, Brian Michael Bendis, even admits that it's only actually 49%, given a number. That wouldn't mean that they're overly, right? That's under half. So what's the other percentage, right? We can go ahead and speculate on some of it, but we know what the other largest majority of race is in America. But they try to make it sound like the majority of the people that go to jail are actually innocent, especially the African American ones, and they really pushing that narrative in here. And I thought it was a very unfair point of view, especially from somebody as smart and as talented as Brian Michael Bendis. I know he cited several source facts in here, and he just kind of threw them together as if they were one fact, when no, they actually weren't. And I thought it was very misleading. Now, I'm not going to say that innocent people don't go to jail and innocent people don't get convicted, because the law is infallible. I'm not that much of a douchebag. I know the law is valid. I've been convicted of a crime that I was actually innocent of. I didn't go to jail or anything. I just got a ticket, but the judge just wasn't hearing it, and I was like, I wasn't even in my car that day. It was one of those flashing lighty things. Yeah, catch you. Yeah. So, yeah, had to pay that ticket. It was garbage. It was actually my wife. It was my wife. She was driving the car. Yeah, that's right. I dived her out on YouTube. But, innocent people sometimes do get caught up. So if the problem is systemic racism, or whatever the case may be, whatever your MacGuffin is to push that story, great. What's the solution? Pointing out a problem doesn't fix the problem. Recognizing a problem doesn't fix it. Pointing at somebody and saying, hey, your shoes are untied, that doesn't fix the fact that they're just going to magically tie up. You got to fix the problem. So I don't know. No, I'm not saying it was a bad story. This was actually a good story. Right? Just some of the narrative in it I didn't much appreciate. I love the fact that Superman wanted to help this guy out who was wrongfully convicted. And I love the fact that there was a villain here who had a disorder known as impulsive control disorder. which is a real thing. It was often misdiagnosed as antisocial disorder for like the longest time in the DSM-4, and now in the DSM-5 it actually has its own heading, and that's huge because you're right. Having impulse control is what makes us act civilized to some degree. But yeah, having that disorder in here, I thought that was really cool to throw that in there. So super smart story. Loved the story. Hated the narrative in it. I really did. Next, Justice League number 59. All right, so this has got two stories in it. The first one is a basic villain story. Villain shows up, wants to destroy the world. Then we find out he's got some sort of ties to the Naomi character that popped out in 2019, right? That was huge. Everybody was after that book. So that's cool. And we got Black Adam involved in this thing, and he's very totalitarian. So, you know, he's not playing any games. He showed up to Naomi. What's going to happen with that? Great, typical, standard story in there. And this was actually written by Brian Michael Bendis as well. Or, no, this was written by Brian Michael Bendis. The other one wasn't. That was written by somebody. Oh, Easton. Easton wrote this. Yeah, just messed that all up. And I'm not editing. We're rolling. Here we go. So, all in all, it was a typical story. But, oh my lord, this Ram V guy. I don't know much about him or her. I don't know much about it. But I know they know how to tell a good story. And they doing this thing with Justice League Black, where it's becoming very Arthur story baseline. That seems to be the thing. You know, Once and Future did that, and we even over in Marvel they're doing it too. So King Arthur Arthurian stories seem to be the thing right now, which I love. I love Arthurian stories. So we got kind of a spin on this with Merlin coming back. We kind of got a hint of it in Future State, like they hinted on it. Now we're gonna get that story kind of fleshed out a little bit. Good stuff. But some terms were thrown in it that I don't want people to get turned off by, because they're super simple. One was when they used the term calibers when the sword was in the stone, right? It's the sword in the stone. It's Excalibur. That's nothing more than Old English for, you guessed it, Excalibur. I knew you were there with me. Also, they use Antonach in it as a philosopher. Antonach, if you don't know, is where the first Christian church was. It was also the first term of Christian, meaning little Christ. It was actually a little slur term. That's kind of like the epicenter of where Christianity kind of went out and started spreading as we knew it, as you read in the Bible today. This was also in Acts 11:26, I think. Anyway, it's also the first term where Christians generally rolled out from. That's the major thing from there. And then two other characters kind of pop in here. One is Orphan. Orphan's an archangel under the Lord. Now, mind you, I'm not like super religious guy. I just really dig that kind of stuff, like that kind of occultish side of Christianity, I guess. Right? But he's an archangel, and this is interesting because he's actually the archangel of like the wilds or the wilderness or forest, right? Wilds. Think of it that way. And then the demon that kind of pops up is Bifons. Now, Bifons is famous because he's in the story of the King Solomon, right? Who could summon demons and have them do his bidding. He taught several forms of mathematics, astronomy, plant, and stone at the same time, but he was more of an educator, right? So here we are again in the magic realms where we're dealing with two opposite forces, right? The intellect and the savage and the wild, right? And of course we flipped the script, right? We made the demon the smart one and the angel more the wild one. And of course both of them, one having the gift from God and one having the weapon from hell, they bring Jason Blood back, you know, the demon. They bring him back. So that was super cool. I really want to see where this story goes. I'm probably more interested in the secondary story in this than I am the prime story. Not that the first one was bad, but still good. Definitely check it out. And that's too long of a rant. Let's speed this up. All right, Amazing Spider-Man. Number one, this is a tie-in to The King in Black. So what does that mean? So basically, this is really just a reintroduction to a character that we may have forgotten about. Reptile. He changes into like dinosaurs, right? So this is kind of a reintroduction to him. Most of this is just Peter Parker beating himself up that he thinks this whole King in Black thing is his fault. Because everything's his fault, apparently. Like, just everything. You know, just because you have a small part in something doesn't mean that you're part of the overall thing of it. That's the fallacy of Peter Parker's thinking in this, and eventually he learns that as he goes through this, that, you know, just one person. If my part's this small, then my interjection should be that small, right? It's equal, right? Fair. Next, love this one, pick of the week, Black Knight. Man, so nobody likes Black Knight, right? Like, he's the douchebag of the group that nobody likes, but you need him, right? So the superheroes call him up, and he's like fighting with them, and they're like, hey, yeah, we really just called you here to do your magical thing, where it takes the negative stuff inside of him and forces a blast. We find out that his sword, the Ebony Blade, and Mjolnir are the same but opposites at the same time. Like, Thor couldn't lift up, you know, the Ebony Blade, because it only answers to the Black Knight. I think we're going to get a little bit more clarification on this story in the background of the Black Knight and how his whole thing works in future issues of this, because there's somebody there who needs to learn more, who doesn't even believe that Camelot was a real place. Whatever that means. But the great part of this story is that heroes are using a person that they don't want to spend time with, that they don't particularly like, and openly admit it. And they just want to use him because he's able to help them. And then he's expected to go back to his little box and not be part of the group. And that's a real douchebag thing, right? That's heroes being bad guys again. So hopefully he just turns into a villain and starts lobbing off their heads. Oh, speaking of lobbing off heads, he gets his head lobbed off in here. Like, some dude just throws this knife thing in. And it was great. Okay, comic book great. Not like real life, except that's messy. All right, Thor, number 13. I've been digging this Blake story, and if you dropped out on this, shame on you, because it got good in here. So the whole point of this is Donald Blake, who was Thor's alter personality back in the Silver Age, was a creation of Odin. And he realizes this at some point, and he realized that his life is meaningless. Why was he created? Why did his God create him, right? So now he's going to go fight all the Thors and things that represent Odin, and he's chopping away the tree of life, right, for the dimensions or whatever. And Odin has to show back up, right? His God shows back up and tells him that your life was meaningless because I created you. Now, just hang on that for a second. Ooh, that's a rough one, right? And then Thor shows up and is like, right, the son of the god, right, shows up and is about to just lay down on old Blake here. But does Blake, right, does Blake, or Blake, that's the only way I can say that. Well, does Dr. Blake here have a valid argument? He was created for purpose, and then when the purpose wasn't needed anymore, instead of destroying him or whatever, you send him to some suburbanite hell hole where all he could do was walk around. That was your gift to him as a god. He was able to walk without a cane in a very boring suburb for eternity. I don't know. I'm kind of on the side of Dr. Blake here. What do you think? I'm really curious about this one. Leave your opinions down below. I'm definitely keeping track of this one. Okay. And last but not least, Orphan of the Five Beasts. This was interesting. It kind of reminds me of the cartoon Super Jail that came on late at night on, I think it was, what was it? Cartoon Network, maybe? Or Comedy Central. It was one of those. The artwork's very it may be the same guy for all I know. I never got that guy's name. The typical revenge story happening here. Old sensei dying, young Padawan student. I made the greatest mistake, says the sensei. You need to fix it because reasons. It doesn't really matter. Tells him a horrific story about how he got screwed over by some people. Kid's going to go out and find out what's going on in the real world, right? So it's somebody's reintroduction into the savage wildlands, right? And happen to deal there, and he meets his first bad guy in here, boss level, if you will. And it's the art in it makes this comical. The story is kind of serious, right? It's like I need to kill you because you're a bad guy because my sensei said so. Sensei. I just like saying sensei. But yeah, that happens in here. And the first villain, of course, has like these ridiculous thighs that can crush a horse. It's completely and utterly, fantastically whimsical. So definitely, if you haven't yet, and you're watching this in time, rush back out and try to get this. I think most comic book people that I know would generally like this, especially the ones that watch my show. All right, guys, that's my haul for this week. Don't forget about Blaster or Stash at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on YouTube, where myself, Huey, Spectacular Spider Grandpa, we all kind of sit around and we bring these comic books there and we kind of discuss them, and we have a live chat going on where you can engage us and ask questions about comic book geekdom, whatever the case may be. Also, if you haven't yet on this channel, you know I do a promo right before I launch one of my project videos. You can check that out right here. But you can check it out. It's just a promo. This is for Huey over at Blaster or Stash It. He's a Wolverine fan, so I really wanted to kind of play fun to the whole jokes that we use in the Blaster or Stash It crew. So they're all the ones I know of are in there. If you can think of any more, let me know. I'll go back in and redo the video. All right, guys. I got a book. It's St. Patrick's Day. You know what that means. Guinness, Jameson, and bad decisions. Talk to y'all later. Bye.